Today we will be knitting this everlasting super scarf, which measures 10 inches wide and 96 inches long. The pattern and scarf was designed by Cathy Payson on yarnspirations.com. Yarnspirations has given me permission to do YouTube tutorials on their free patterns. The materials you will need for this pattern is 6 balls of Red Heart Grande yarn. The color in the pattern is winter green. Because I could not find the yarn in my local store, I'm using buttercream, Luxe Craft Alpaca, and light blue. You will also need a darning needle, a pair of scissors, and 15mm needles. Since the yarn I'm using isn't a size 7 yarn, but is a 6, I will be using 12mm needles instead. This pattern is catered to those who already know how to knit but have difficulty in reading patterns. The link to this pattern and kit will be in my description box below this video. First, we're going to start by casting on 16 stitches. So I am going to figure out how much of a length of yarn I need by doing the long tail cast on method, by wrapping my yarn around my needle 16 times. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail to give me some room in case I cast on too tightly. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. I'm going to take a little bit more just in case I need some. And then I'm going to tie a slip knot. And then we're going to cast on our 16 stitches. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Now we have 16 stitches on our needle. Now we are going to knit 2 rows. Tighten that down a little bit and just keep on knitting along. I'm not used to using needles so big. Okay, we've got 1 row. I'm going to do another row of knit stitches. As we look at the pattern, we see that we begin doing the rigid stitch. The first 2 rows of the rigid stitch are knit stitches, so we will knit, or I'm sorry, the first 2 rows of the rigid stitch are all knits as well. So we're going to knit 2 more rows, so we're going to have a total of 4 rows of knits. So do 2 more rows of knits and then I'll meet you back. Okay, we just completed our first 2 rows of the rigid stitch. So you're going to have a total of 4 knit rows, but 2 of the knit rows is where you started at the beginning, and then the next 2 knit rows are the start of the first 2 rows of the 4-row rigid stitch. So now row 3 of the rigid stitch is, in the pattern it states that the first and last stitch, which are the edging stitches, are to be knit stitches. So we begin row 3 with a knit 1, then we will continue the rigid stitch by knitting 2, purling 2, and then knitting 2. We will continue that pattern across until we get to the last stitch, which will be a knit stitch. So we're going to start off by knitting 1, and then we're going to knit 2. Remember, the first one's just the start of the edging, and then we're going to purl 2, knit 2, and we're going to purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, and now we're at the last stitch, and the last stitch is going to be knit, and that's part of our edging. Now we're going to start row 4. Take a look at the pattern. Okay, now on row 4 we're going to knit the first stitch again. Since it's our edging, we always knit the first and the last stitch. We're going to knit that stitch, and then we're going to purl 2, 1, 2, knit 2, purl 2, sorry if I look fidgety, it's hard, I'm not used to using these big needles, so just bear with me. Let's knit 2, then we're going to purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, whoops, the yarn in front there, and then we're at our last stitch again, and that last stitch is a knit stitch. So we're going to knit that, and then we finished our first 4 rows of the rigid stitch. You're going to repeat the 4 rows of rigid stitch until your scarf measures 96 inches long, or however long you prefer. But I'm going to do another 4 rows for you, and then after you reach your desired length, you're going to stop after row 2 of the rigid stitch. So let's, I'm going to go ahead and start some more. Remember, we knit the first 2 rows of our rigid stitch, rigid rows. So we're going to knit all the way across. I don't know, I always put a T on the end of my S on a cross. I don't know why I do that. But I do. So I'm going to knit And this pattern is just showing you basically how to do this stitch, because the pattern, when I looked at it for the first time, was a little confusing. And I know if you looked at my pattern in the beginning, you saw that I had written some little notes on the bottom. That was to help me better understand. Okay, so we got our first row of knits. I'm going to turn it around and we're going to do our second row of knits. Get that yarn behind there. I'm just going to truck them along down. I'm going to pull some more of my yarn from my ball. Oops. And I know this isn't a big, really a pattern on how to knit. I'm actually working on one. So this is just, I mean, it is a beginner friendly scarf because the only stitches you need to really know is knitting and purling and how to cast on and cast off or bind off. Last two stitches. Now we're going to start row 3 of our rigid stitch. I don't know if you pronounce it ridged or rigid. I say rigid. I don't know. It's just me. But anyway. Okay, now we're starting at row 3. So remember, on row 3, on every row, we're always going to knit the first stitch. So we're going to knit, and then we're going to knit 2. Then we're going to purl 2. If I can get my yarn over there. I've seen a little knot in my yarn where I had to join it. So, and then we're going to knit 2. Then we're going to purl 2. Some more yarn from my ball. We already did purl 2. Now we're going to knit 2, purl. Whoops, I'm so sorry. Okay, now purl 2. Then we're going to knit 2, and then our last stitch is always a knit. Knit that, and now we are going to turn our work, and then we're going to start with row 4 of the rigid stitch. So of course we're going to knit our first stitch like always, and then we're going to purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, whoops, knit 2, purl 2, and I'm sorry if this looks like it's too close up. I just really want you guys to see how I'm doing the stitches in case you can't see it too well, but purl or knit 2 more, then we're going to purl 2, blank, and now we're going to knit our last stitch. So you're going to keep repeating rows 1 through 4 of the rigid stitch until your scarf reaches the desired length, which is 96 inches on the pattern. But if you don't want your scarf that long, then you can stop however long you want. There's no law that tells you you have to do it 96 inches, because I know I'm not going to do it 96 inches. But once you reach your desired length, I'll be back and I will show you how to finish, and make sure you finish after you stop after row 2, and then we're going to finish off by knitting the last 2 rows. So you're going to have another 4 rows on at the end of the scarf, and then we're going to cast off. Now that we've reached our desired length after row 2 of the rigid stitch, we are going to do 2 more rows of only knit stitches all the way across. Some of my yarn from my ball. Now we're going to do our last row of knits. Oops. Get it on there. It's a finicky little sucker. Pull some more yarn from my ball. Try to pull a lot this time, so I don't have to keep doing it. And now we're going to bind off. So it says in the pattern you're going to bind off knitwise. So I'm going to knit the first 2 stitches. Bring that first stitch over our second. Knit another, bring that stitch over, knit another, bring that stitch over, knit another, bring that stitch over, and just keep doing that all the way down to the end of the row. I'm always afraid when I do this that the other loop's going to slide off my needle. I'm going to be there. Okay. There. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to cut our yarn so I can find my scissors. Where did my scissors go? Oh, there they are. Okay. We're going to cut the yarn. And then we're going to take this loop, we're going to pull that out like so. And then we're going to thread our yarn onto our needle. If I can get it in there. Okay. And then we're just going to weave in our tail. And when I weave in my tails, I like to put a little dab of Fabri-Tac on my, after I cut it, just to make sure that it's secure, so it's not going to go anywhere. Weaving in. Okay, but yeah, and what I do is, like, if I'm going to cut my tail right here, is I'll take some Fabri-Tac and, you know, lift this part up and put a little bit of Fabri-Tac right there, and then I'll press it down and let it dry, and then it's nice and secure. And then we're gonna flip over our scarf and get our tail from where we cast it on, thread that in the needle, and we're going to weave that in like so. And then I'll put some Fabri-Tac on that also when I'm done here. And then we're finished. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and please subscribe to my channel. When I get enough subscribers, I'll be doing monthly giveaways, which can consist of knit or crochet kits, yarn bowls, crochet hook holders and displays, furl hooks, yarn, or knitting and crochet accessories. So thank you. Bye-bye.